So let's go back to what is business ethics all about? Well, it's about our standards. What are our standards? Do we have high standards? Do we operate to the same principles? Do we compromise with our principles, with our standards, in order to make a profit? It's about our behaviour. It's about what we do, the decisions we make, how we interact with other stakeholders, how we deal with this world for our descendants, for the people who are coming through and are being born today, and there will be students and business people in 20 years' time. And it's about our decisions. It's about the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis, on an hour-to-hour basis. So I've spoken about business ethics, and I've talked about who the business ethics involves. But business ethics has an impact on certain groups of society. If you're a company and you're making decisions, you will be making decisions about your customers. So your customers will be interacting with you as a business, and you have to decide as managers and as a company whether you're selling goods which are of an appropriate quality, whether you're providing post-sale servicing which is appropriate, whether you are marketing your goods correctly. You can talk about the business's responsibility to its employees. Do you pay fairly to your employees for what they're worth? Now that could be, do you pay them too low? Or it could also be, do you pay them too much? Are there some parts of the company who are paid more than what they contribute to the company? And this is a very important issue when we look at the bonuses controversy in society today. What we have to ask there is, why are people being paid that amount? Do they contribute that amount to the company and more? Does the company get value from that salary payment that the executives receive? We can also talk about how certain sections in the company are treated. So, for example, in Africa, do females have opportunities to bring children to childcare? Is housing provided in very poor parts of the world? Is there job security? Does the company value its employees as individuals, as meaningful people? We can talk about the suppliers. Companies will have to deal with suppliers. They will take goods on credit. That is, they receive the goods just now and they agree to pay back in the future. When you look at companies going into administration, one big question is, did the companies enter into transactions when they knew the firm was going to go into administration? Did they basically put unobserved risk onto the transaction that was unknown by the creditor, the supplier? Is that an ethical decision? And ethics is not black and white in some cases. So, for example, you could argue that it was unethical to let the supplier think that they would be getting paid, but you could argue that it's ethical to protect the jobs of the employees in the company. And you have what we call is maybe a relativist approach to ethics. Relativist is you weigh up the good and the bad. And you could argue in the case of not informing suppliers that potentially the greater good was served by trying to turn the company around without letting suppliers know. You could argue from an absolute sense that lying to the supplier was wrong, was unethical. And even although your employees were being affected, the fact that you lied to your supplier was the wrong decision. And two wrongs don't make a right. So you have a relativist approach to ethics, and you also have an absolutist approach to ethics. You have an absolutist and relativist approach to business ethics. Businesses also have a responsibility to society, to the wider stakeholder base. And the big area that is in the news all the time is climate change. Do we reduce our greenhouse emissions in order to protect society at large? Or do we argue against that? At the moment, we have different approaches to this throughout the world. So some countries, predominantly the emerging market countries, that need to have this cheap power in order to sustain their growth, are arguing that there shouldn't be strong caps on greenhouse gases. And you've got Europe that are saying there has to be caps. And we saw an example recently where China was saying that its airlines are not going to engage in the European carbon tax because it will affect their companies very badly. So you have spoken about climate. I've spoken about peoples as well, the environment. A lot of oil companies operate throughout the world in very poor areas. And when they set up their drilling, do they ensure that the local population is being protected? So there are many cases in which business ethics, in fact, in all decisions, ethics underlie the outcome of an action a company wishes to take. And I would say that you could bring it down into two main areas, two main questions that you would ask yourself when you enter into some type of decision or strategy. The one is, how is your company going to engage with its stakeholders? Its stakeholders are its employees, its customers, its suppliers, its investors, the people that are affected by its decisions, its competitors. Competitors are stakeholders of a business. Why? Because whatever happens in your business will have an impact on their business. The banking crisis is the best example there, where bad decisions in one bank can actually lead to a contagion effect throughout the whole sector. So how does your company engage with its stakeholders? The second part of the business ethics is, how does your management behave and make decisions? What are the principles, the moral codes, the value systems that your management base all of their decisions and strategies on? Does your company know what it is? Has your company thought about it? Is it something that's just internally generated? A lot of people argue that values are based from looking within, finding out what the values of the organization are. And then that drives the decision making and the identity of that organization. Other people argue that the values have to come from without into the company. And decisions are based on the external expectations of your company. So I mentioned a few minutes ago about law and legality. And there is a distinction between ethics and law, and I'll use two statements. And they're quite simple statements, but they illustrate the difference. In ethics, you would ask, what is ethically right and wrong? In law, you would argue what is legally right and wrong. One area where that's important is in taxation of companies. So ethically, you could argue that companies must contribute to society through the payment of taxes. But companies can avoid paying their taxes through using tax loopholes in the law. So companies can be perfectly legal in reducing their tax payment, but the argument is, or the question is, are they being ethical in looking to reduce their tax payment? So you have ethics and you have law, you have business ethics, you have business law. There is a distinction. Now, an ethical decision would be a decision which is both ethical and also legal. Because you could argue that it's not ethical to break the law. So these are decisions which are, again, not clear-cut, but face the company every single day. You could argue, are there unethical laws? You have laws that may affect human rights, individual rights. You have the taxation issue that I spoke about. And you have discrimination. Do we have laws that discriminate against age, whether young or whether old? Against gender? We have a case in Europe just now where there's a big movement to ensure that more females are on the boards of companies. In some cases, they're talking about a 40% quota. Why? Because there are very few females on the board of a company. There have been arguments that having a quota is unethical. There's been arguments that not having a quota is unethical. Again, it all comes back to your value system, your moral code, the principles in which you make decisions. You could have laws which discriminate against religion, against tribes, against groups of people. Are those laws unethical? It all depends on the situation, and it all depends on your value system. So I've given an overview of business ethics, how it affects the decision making of companies, how it has implications for all of society, not just the company itself. So for this particular task, in this particular video, I want you to research and write a 1,000-word case study on a current or recent business story that involved ethical decisions. I want you to describe it in detail, and I want you to explore and explain the ethical issues at the heart of that case. The expectation is that your report will be written as if it's to a client, and it should be of professional quality. Your grades will be affected by the presentation, by the balance of your arguments, and the depth of your exploration. Thank you very much.